I hope everyone had fun with the eclipse today, but it's now time for the news roundup, where we tell you everything that's been happening in the world of tabletop gaming over the past week. So let's get right down to it for the week of April 8th, 2024. Our first story is the only moon-related topic I have this week, and it's about a board game movie coming to Netflix later this October. Titled Family Pack, the trailer just came out, and from what I can tell, it seems to be Jumanji meets Werewolf. In the trailer, we see a family starting to play a game of Werewolf that seems to transport them back in time to what looks like medieval ages, and of course, with plenty of suspicion of who or where is the werewolf. In particular, it does seem to be based on the Werewolves of Miller's Hollow version of Werewolves, even though there are plenty there, including the fact that it was sort of one of those games you could just play with anything before we made physical copies. But from the art on the box, it seems to lean more towards specifically the style of that game. This is being directed by Francois Ozon, and the entire trailer is in French, and I assume it's going to be that way and not be dubbed in whatever language it is for the region you're watching your Netflix in. But Netflix does have some weird regional stuff every now and then, so I can't say for certain. Now, from what I can tell, at least with the trailer, I do think it's aimed more for a younger family audience. But of course, when I think of the games of Werewolf and some of the language and ideas used in them, I would think maybe a little bit higher. But of course, ratings can change, especially when you're going to streaming first versus to just movie theaters. Regardless, if you're looking for another Halloween movie to add to your list and maybe something that's a bit more board game related, this is one that you can check out. Lorcana is once again having to face the problem of being too popular, this time when it comes to their tournament events. They recently announced 2 events, one in Atlanta, Georgia, the other in Lille, France, and both of them apparently sold out in minutes. Because of that, they announced they're going to be doubling the attendance for those events, as well as any future events are looking for larger venues to keep up with the demand to play in these Lorcana events. Now, for those who want to take part in this, if you were already part of that initial wave trying to buy tickets and unfortunately you didn't get it, you might have been put on a waiting list. I didn't sign up, so I don't know whether that was something you clicked or it was automatic. Those people were going to be the first to be offered these extra seats. Now, for Atlanta, Georgia, that actually should have already happened. And I believe France's are going out today to the people on the wait list. So odds are, though, by the time you're watching this, you already know if you have a chance to play in one of these 2 events. Now, I feel like this sounds like great news, but some people may say, why didn't they already predict this if they're already having a hard time getting product to the stores when it first launched? And I feel that they could have expected people to buy a lot, but they weren't sure if people were going to want to play in the competitive, more tournament scenes. So maybe they played it a bit safer, thinking it might be more casual at first. But it seems people are already super excited to play this in a competitive scene. And I will say that they seem to have responded very quickly in doubling the size of these tournaments to make sure they can fit more people. I'm assuming that with this, they'll also look at more venues. So if they can't increase the size of venue, maybe we can just have more in the regions that have a larger player base. Regardless, this does seem to show more evidence of Disney Lorcana staying in the once big 3, now big 5, and whether it's actually going to be able to topple the old giants when it comes to the size of their competitive tournaments. Speaking of trading card games and tournament play, let's now turn to Yu-Gi-Oh!, where a new rule has been added that seems to limit who can participate in their tournament play, at least in Japan. If you plan to participate in any of the World Championship qualifications, this new rule states eligibility to participate is limited to those who are Japanese nationals and have an address in Japan at the time of advanced registration in the shop's qualifying round and the day of participation. I will say this was a Google translation, and obviously that means there could be some nuances I didn't catch. So if you know more about this and there's something that needs to be corrected, please let me know in the comments below. But basically, it does seem to be stating that you need to be from Japan and of Japanese origin to take part in these tournaments. Now, I will say that if you do well in these tournaments and you win, you could become the Japan representative in the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship, which may be what they're really trying to protect here. I did hear someone say it's to stop people from coming to Japan in order to take the slot when they lose in the tournaments in their own region, but I feel like you'd only add rules for that if the region they're going to needs to be protected because it's easier there. And I would be pretty shocked if Japan had the easier meta, so to speak, when it came to Yu-Gi-Oh! It seems more likely it's more about just defending that slot, but also at the same time, I haven't seen this rule applied to other countries to make sure that you have to be, for example, living in America and have an American citizenship in order to get the US representative. But maybe rules similar to this will be added to the other regions if they feel like this is something that needs to be more defended when it comes to future world championships of Yu-Gi-Oh! Either way, it's something that's interesting to see, and if there's someone out there who's much more well-versed when it comes to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro scene, please let me know more about this, and if this is something that's more of not that big of a deal or something you think could change the way that people are able to play Yu-Gi-Oh! When it comes to the pro scene. Now, April Fool's was last week, but I didn't talk too much about it, even though I usually try to collect up whatever the jokes people put out there, and that was because I didn't really find any. Now, there were two that I did find, so I felt like I should at least mention them now, but if there are any that I missed, please let me know in the comments below. But going back, first, we have a Ticket to Ride joke. It was for a new product titled Ticket to Ride, A Moon's Adventure, which is actually, I guess this makes this the second moon-related story. I forgot to count this one, so I guess there is a bit more moon-related stuff here. Either way, it was a joke, and especially with the playtime, I think had something outrageous, but it seemed to be extremely popular. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if, because of the popularity of the joke, that they actually start working on a moon version of Ticket to Ride. This is actually a great way for companies to put out something funny, but then with everyone like saying, oh, I'd buy that, then they're like, well, maybe we should actually look into making this a real product. That's actually my favorite kinds of jokes, when they turn out not to be jokes and real things. Speaking of which, the second one is about a real product. Starfinder, Pathfinder, the RPG series. If you didn't know, they're technically in the same universes. There's just a huge time gap. So Paizo decided to put out a new book called Starfinder, The Gap. Supposedly, this includes everything that happened that led Pathfinder into Starfinder. And the book is a bunch of blank pages. So I guess that means fill it out yourself. Either way, a funny little thing. And they're actually making this book, so you can buy a book that says Starfinder, The Gap, a bunch of blank pages. I don't know whether you can use that to maybe trick your GM and be like, well, this is in the official Starfinder book and says here, I get to roll 10 D20s for my new damaging spell. It was an old lost information, but we can use it now. I'm very curious to see if anyone tries to do that in their next Starfinder, or I guess Pathfinder game. Now let's get on to game announcements. First, for those who are Rob Zombie and board game fans, a new game based on him is coming out titled House of a Thousand Corpses. It should be coming out in the fourth quarter of this year. Then CMON announced a new God of War game, this time a miniatures one, big shocker, that'll be coming to GameFound this April. Then we have a new Flesh and Blood deck. This is actually titled Armory Deck KO. These are actually only going to be released during Armory events. They're basically special decks designed for you to buy so you can participate in the tournament right away. This first one is going to be available May 3rd. Then we have Vagrant Son expansions, Encore and Off the Rails. These were actually crowdfunded a little while back last year, I believe. They will now be available in retail this July. Then from Modifius, we have Cohor's Cthulhu Tactics. This is going to be a war game pitting Roman soldiers against Cthulhu cultists. That will be coming to Kickstarter later this year. Then for the Warhammer fans out there, there was a bunch of news announced for the Orcs and the Custodians, including a lot of new products such as dice, codex, combat patrols, and a battle force. So if either of those armies are interesting to you, it seems that there's a lot of great new products out there for you. And finally, this is not technically a game announcement, but probably still excited for those who play the game. We know about the new set Star Wars Unlimited is coming out in July, Shadows of the Galaxy, but they've now spoiled some cards, and we do know that there will be characters from the Mandalorian show. So if you're a big fan of that show, you can build a deck based on those characters. But that is all the announcements we have for this week. Let me know your thoughts on any of these stories, whether you're a pro card game player, whether you got into the Disney Lorcana tournament, or if you play the Yu-Gi-Oh scene. Let me know what your thoughts on all these news stories are in the comments down below. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on the News Roundup.